Good morning. This hearing will now come to order. As it's fully virtual, we must address a few housekeeping matters. For today's meeting, the chair or staff designated by the chair may mute participants' microphones while they are not under recognition for the purposes of eliminating inadvertent background noise. Members are responsible for muting or unmuting themselves. If you notice when you are recognized that you have not unmuted yourself, I will ask the staff to send you a request to unmute yourself. Please then accept that request so you are no longer muted. I remind all members and witnesses that the 5-minute clock still applies. If there is a technology issue, we will move to the next member until the issue is resolved, and you will retain the balance of your time. You will notice a clock on your screen that will show how much time is remaining. At 1 minute remaining, the clock will turn to yellow. At 30 seconds remaining, I will gently tap the gavel to remind members that their time is almost expired. When your time is expired, the clock will turn red, and I will begin to recognize the next member. In terms of the speaking order, we will follow the order set forth in the House rules, beginning with the chair and ranking member, then members present at the time the hearing is called to order will be recognized in order of seniority, and finally, members not present at the time of the hearing is called to order. Finally, House rules require me to remind you that we have set up an email address to which members can send anything they wish to submit in writing at any of our hearings or markups. That email address has been provided in advance to your staff. Okay, we can go ahead. I'm so pleased to welcome our first panel of witnesses today, Shelley C. Lowe and Dr. Maria Rosaria Jackson, chairs of the National Endowments for the Humanities and the Arts. Both witnesses are appearing for the first time before our subcommittee. Congratulations to both of you on your confirmation, and thank you. Today's hearing provides us with a chance to hear more about the great work both endowments have done over the last couple of years in supporting our communities across the country, economically, culturally, and educationally. The National Endowments for the Arts and Humanities are a perfect example of how the federal government can be a positive force in communities large and small in every single state. In your statement following your confirmation, Dr. Jackson, you said, in addition to serving as an economic engine, arts and creativity are core to what it takes to heal our nation, our communities, and ourselves. And I wholeheartedly agree. The FY 2023 budget request for the National Endowment for the Humanities is $200.68 million, $20.68 million over the FY 2022 enacted level. The request for the National Endowment for the Arts is $203.55 million, $23.55 million over the FY 22 enacted level. These requests build on the vital increases in funding this committee has provided to the endowments in FY 22. The enacted bill provided $180 million to each endowment, an increase of $12.5 million apiece above FY 2021. In addition, Congress has provided funding to both endowments through the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan. These additional investments totaled $210 million for each endowment. This supplemental funding saved jobs, saved cultural institutions across the country, and provided an essential lifeline to industries hit very hard by the pandemic. Following the passage of the 2022 bill, Chair Lowe, you released a statement highlighting how that funding would allow NEH to support cultural and educational institutions, which were still in the midst of recovering from the pandemic, a recovery which still continues to this day for much of the sector. Furthermore, as you pointed out, that funding was designed to expand essential access to humanities resources to all Americans in this critical time. Looking forward, there is still more work to be done. Every dollar provided to the endowments has an economic footprint many times larger on the community it is invested in. And as we will discuss today, continuing strong funding for the endowment's work provides benefits to far-ranging fields from rural design and development to civic education. I'm looking forward to both of your testimonies, and I would like to now yield to our ranking member, Mr. Joyce, for his opening remarks.
Thank you for yielding, Madam Chair, and for holding today's hearing to discuss arts and humanities for fiscal year 2023. I'd like to join you in welcoming our first panel of witnesses, Shelley Lowe, Chair of the National Endowment for Humanities, and Dr. Maria Rosario Jackson, Chairman of the National Endowment of Arts. Congratulations on your recent confirmations. Your stewardship of the nation's arts and humanities is important and impacts students and communities across the country, so we appreciate you taking the time this morning to join us. I look forward to learning more about the NEH and NEA's goals for the upcoming year and how the FY23 request will enable your agencies to support cultural institutions, art organizations, and universities, and to provide easier access for all Americans to arts, cultural, and educational resources. Chair Pingree has always been a strong advocate for the arts, and I look forward to working with her and our subcommittee colleagues to continue providing NEH and NEA with the necessary resources within reasonable spending limits to meet their missions in FY23. Thank you, Chair Pingree. I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joyce. And I would now like to recognize Chair Lowe, then followed by Chair Jackson for their opening remarks. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Good morning. Yalt Shelley Lowe Yenishia, Belagana Nishle, Nanastasia Tachini Bashachi, Belagana Dashache, Do Tabaha Dashanale, Lokantia, the Nasha. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Madam Chair, Mr. Ranking Member, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. My name is Shelley Lowe, and I have the honor of serving as the 12th Chair of the National Endowment for the Humanities. I am pleased to be here today to speak on behalf of NEH and our budget request for the upcoming fiscal year. NEH is the only federal agency dedicated to funding the humanities, which include history, philosophy, literature, language, archaeology, jurisprudence, and comparative religion. We fund numerous types of projects such as advanced humanities research leading to book publications, curriculum initiatives, and professional development for educators at all levels, the documentation and preservation of languages on the brink of loss, physical and digital infrastructure for cultural and educational institutions, along with many more endeavors essential to national progress and scholarship in the humanities. NEH has spent much of the past 2 years working to stabilize and support colleges and universities, museums, libraries, historic sites, public television and radio stations, independent researchers, and documentary filmmakers struggling to cope with the economic fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic, which we continue to grapple with today. Thanks to funding from the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan, NEH has been able to distribute millions in economic recovery funding, helping organizations retain staff, maintain programs, facilities, and operations, and convert physical programs into digital offerings to increase access, even from a distance. But there is still much to be done, and the humanities are vital to rebuilding our communities, institutions, and regional economies. The NEH FY23 budget request submitted by the White House is $200.68 million. This funding will allow NEH to continue to support the fundamental building blocks of American civil society and fund projects that help us examine the human condition, understand our cultural heritage, foster mutual respect for diverse beliefs and cultures, develop media and information literacy, and promote civics education. And it will allow us to expand some of NEH's most impactful initiatives and grant programs in FY 2023. This includes providing additional support to projects in the humanities and for awards to NEH's partners in each of the 56 states and jurisdictions through our Federal State Partnership Office. These projects reach millions of Americans in rural areas, urban neighborhoods, and suburban communities. In the last year, projects supported by the state and jurisdictional councils and their subrecipients reached more than 6.6 million participants. The proposed FY 2023 appropriation will also enable the expansion of NEH's A More Perfect Union initiative, which builds on NEH's 57-year investment in projects that catalog, preserve, explore, and promote American history, and support the utilization of these lessons of history to address today's challenges. As NEH Chair, I am deeply committed to extending the reach of NEH's grant making and the projects and products we support so that all Americans have opportunities to participate and benefit from humanities-centered research, education, and public programs. To meet this goal, we plan to create an NEH Office of Data and Evaluation to analyze the effectiveness of agency programs and policies in advancing equity and support for underserved communities, an Office of Outreach to focus on increasing NEH's engagement with underserved communities and institutions, and a Chief Diversity Officer position to advise the agency on all matters of diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. Recognizing our changing climate, NEH is also developing new initiatives to study and address the impact of climate events on our cultural resources, museums, and historic sites. The budget request before you will allow NEH to build upon our current work and move the agency forward in changing our world. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much. Chair Jackson, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Pingree, Ranking Member Joyce, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. I'm grateful for your leadership and your support for the arts, and it's an honor to serve as Chair of the National Endowment for the Arts and to discuss with you President Biden's fiscal 2023 budget request of $203.55 million for the NEA. Before doing so, I'd like to share a little bit about myself. My commitment to the arts began at home. My father, who retired from the U.S. Postal Service, and my mother, who worked for the Los Angeles Unified School District, looked to the arts to teach my brother and me about the richness of our cultures. They wanted us to be proud and curious about our own stories and the stories of others. Through the arts, they wanted us to become aware of our similarities, our differences, and our shared humanity, and to understand the power of creativity, imagination, and entrepreneurial spirit. Those values have been foundational throughout my career. The work of the NEA is more important now than ever. The arts, in addition to serving as an economic engine, are essential to improving our children's education and to the well-being and health of our nation. For these reasons, advancing equity and access to the arts for all people is critically important. The NEA is small but mighty. Every congressional district benefits annually from NEA awards. And due to tremendous need throughout the arts sector, we must do more. This budget increases investments in programs that have a tangible benefit in your communities, allows for greater engagement with organizations regardless of size or zip code, and makes possible additional strategies that promote the health and well-being of all people. Whether in rural or urban areas, all Americans should be able to participate in the arts. That is, to experience artworks, to be expressive and make art, to teach and learn, to have creative outlets, and in other words, to lead artful lives, essential to our reaching our full potential as a nation. The arts serve as an economic engine. In a recent study by the Bureau of Economic Analysis with the NEA, arts and cultural economic activity accounted for 4.2% of GDP, or $876 billion in 2020. That report also shows that arts workers were especially hard hit. While the arts have great power to fuel our economy, the sector requires significant support. As you know, the NEA received CARES Act funding of $75 million and American Rescue Plan funding of $135 million. As part of ARP, the NEA distributed resources to the 6 regional arts organizations, 56 state and jurisdictional arts agencies, and made awards to 66 local arts agencies for subgranting in 38 states. The Arts Endowment also approved grants to organizations in all states, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the District of Columbia. The President's budget builds upon past investments and recognizes the NEA's critical role in supporting communities. This includes programs focused on small and first-time applicants and programs that strengthen communities through arts and design. Turning to education and well-being, NEA's arts education funding helps to close the opportunity gap for students who have the least access to the arts. In health, the NEA research labs are exploring the arts' ability to treat chronic pain, to delay cognitive decline among older adults, and to foster social and emotional development in early childhood. Health-related work also includes creative forces. NEA's Military Healing Arts Network focused on military and veteran populations exposed to trauma. Arts, culture, and design also play essential roles towards more inclusive and equitable communities by building bridges across cultures, fostering mutual respect, helping people enter meaningful careers, and much more. This budget will build on successful engagement with historic historically Black colleges and universities and tribal communities, and increased outreach to Hispanic serving institutions. It will allow the NEA to continue a comprehensive approach to advancing equity for all Americans, including veterans, people with disabilities, and those in rural and urban areas alike. In closing, I want to again thank you, Chair Pingree, Ranking Member Joyce, and all members of the subcommittee. I look forward to continuing to earn the Arts Endowment's longstanding bipartisan support, and I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. It's great to have a chance to have both of you in front of our committee, and we apologize that we had to cancel once and bring you back today, and we may have some members coming and going. It's a busy day for everyone on the Hill, especially when you reschedule and do a time you hadn't originally planned, but we're just thrilled to have you here. So we'll start with some questions, and I'm gonna jump right in. Rather than talking about your overall budget, I just want to talk about a couple of the specific programs that you're both doing. And again, I just really appreciate the work that you did there. And I think it's so important to recognize the role that the NEA and NEH played in helping our cultural institutions through such difficult times as we've experienced during the pandemic. Many of them aren't through with those challenges yet, but as you mentioned, some of the funding Congress was able to make available, I know, have been critically important. So one program I want to talk about through the NEA is the work the Collaborative Citizens Institute on Rural Design has been doing in improving the quality of life and economic revitalization of rural communities across the United States. I come from the most rural state in the nation, and so we know some of the challenges that communities have had to face in going through extreme change. The Institute has worked with the community of Millinocket, which is in my home state, to empower the community in its economic revitalization. It's been pivoting from a previous focus on the paper industry to looking forward to what their future will be. So could you talk a little bit about how the work of the Institute promotes economic strength in communities alongside building community cohesion?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Pingree. It's good to see you again. The Citizens Institute on Rural Design, having a planning background myself, is one of the programs that really calls my attention at the Arts Endowment. And the strength of it is the network of citizens and leaders who have the opportunity to delve into design principles to better understand what's possible in terms of community development in rural areas. So this includes exchanging best practices across the country, being able to access design resources that wouldn't otherwise be available to them. It's helpful in getting organizations ready to compete effectively for funding in design and the arts, among other fields, because it strengthens the ability to do problem solving and to think imaginatively about what is possible. So certainly, again, the ability to have citizens and leaders come together, draw from other resources, and also exercise their imagination in understanding what could be possible in their communities is really an important feature.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I do really appreciate your planning background. It brings something completely different to this important program. I just want to talk a little bit at the NEH about the infrastructure and capacity building challenge grants. The request is for $1.7 million over enacted. And can you tell us a little bit, Chair Lowe, about how the NEH leverages federal dollars to catalyze non-federal investment in humanities projects through the use of those challenge grants?
Absolutely. Thank you for that important question. One of the unique aspects of NEH and our grant funding lines are the ability for projects, institutions, organizations to apply for challenge grants or infrastructure grants. And these are large grants, these are large projects. And what we do is we require a matching set of funding from outside entities, non-federal entities. So when an institution applies to these grants and they are awarded through NEH, because we have such a rigorous evaluation process, we often have entities come to us to say, well, that gives us kind of a stamp of approval. we've gone through this very rigorous application process. We have been deemed to have a very good project. This amount of funding will come from NEH. Now we can go out and we can ask for private funding and or state funding, philanthropic funding, individual funding to help support these amazing projects to come to fruition. So it really does allow us to use our federal funding to say these are excellent projects that are going on out there and allow those individuals to seek private funding for those projects.
Yeah, that's so great. I mean, given the small amount of funding that the NEH has, overall, it just seems critically important that we help communities to leverage more and seek other sources of funds out there. I will yield back my time and recognize Ranking Member Joyce for his question.
As always, thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Jackson, welcome. I'm always impressed by the work your agency carries out through Creative Forces, NEA's Military Healing Arts Network, to help our military and our veteran populations exposed to trauma, as well as their family and caregivers. Can you discuss how Creative Forces has expanded over the years and how the impact has had on military families and veterans? And if you could, how the FY23 request continues to support these efforts?
Thank you for that question, Ranking Member Joyce. The Creative Forces program is an amazing initiative, as you well know. It's grown over the last 10, 12 years to have 12 sites all over the country. It's a collaboration between the Department of Defense and Veterans Affairs. And the impact that it has had not only on military personnel who have experienced trauma, but by extension, their families and communities, has been documented in ways that are credible scientifically. I think it is a remarkable program that has the capacity to inspire other ways of understanding the arts in society in general. That's one of the things that I'm very excited about, is what we're learning from that work at the intersection of arts and health through the military and its application in those communities for sure and beyond. One of the ways that the program is expanding is there's a grant program now that is focused on community resources that are available to expand the work beyond the sites that are based in military facilities. So bringing more and more people into the fold as we think about individual healing and community healing, I think is critically important. And Creative Forces is such a source for the military community, and I think also beyond.
How did the NEA and its partners continue providing therapy and care throughout the pandemic? And what lessons were learned that'll help this program in the long run?
There was great care. Thank you for that question. There was great care to ensure that there would not be disruptions in treatment. And I think innovations were made in terms of delivery of services through technology, through the internet, applications that didn't exist before and are now available to us as options. Because we had to pivot in so many ways to rearrange our lives and the way we work. So there are a host of teleservices, if you will, that are now options for these programs that weren't available before.
That's great. Thank you very much. Chair Lowe, I understand that you grew up in a small Navajo community in Northeast Arizona where you saw firsthand the impact that the humanities have had on individuals and communities in rural America. In your role as chair, how do you hope to expand NEH's reach to more children and communities across the country and ensure that humanity resources are more evenly distributed throughout the country?
Thank you for that question. This is very close to my heart. As you said, I did grow up in a very small, very rural community. And having been on the National Council for 6 years, I paid a lot of attention to where our NEH funding had been going, but more particularly to where our NEH funding had not been going, and not for the fault of the agency, but more so that applications were not coming in from rural areas and small institutions. So it's a big goal of mine to ensure that the work that we do is going to be reaching smaller communities and rural communities, and this will be done in a couple of different manners. One, we hope to very much create an Office of Data and Evaluation that will look at where we've been doing our funding, where we haven't been doing our funding. And with that, create an Office of Outreach. And that Office of Outreach will help us to get into those communities and share information about the agency with those communities we have not yet served. And in particular, when it comes to serving children, young people, which I think is extremely important when it comes to humanities, particularly civics education. We've done a very large grant with the Department of Education for a civics education program, Educating for American Democracy, which created a roadmap that schools, communities, institutions can use to create civics educations that fit their population, so that will fit rural communities as opposed to urban communities, that they can really make it something that is theirs and really kind of points to the specific important topics that they need to be addressing in their communities. I'm also very interested in supporting National History Day and making sure that our state and jurisdictional humanities councils are able to get into those rural communities that they have access to and really start to encourage National History Day in the high schools and get students to be looking at history projects. The third way that we do a lot of outreach into communities, and we're hoping to make sure to make inroads, is to support our EdCitement, our online curriculum program, and making sure that people have access to that.
Great, thank you very much. I yield back what no time I have left. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Always time for you. Chair McCollum, do you have questions today? I think you're muted.
All right. The clock's going to give me back my 5 seconds, I hope. Anyways, thank you so much for having this, rescheduling this meeting with the chair of the National Endowments. And Chair Pingree, thank you very much for all the work that you did to make sure that we had a healthy budget for both panels that are appearing today. So it's been really important what we've done during the pandemic, especially with the crisis facing our nation, with the role of the arts and the humanities in here. The rescue plan, I have to give both of your organizations kudos for your previous leadership and making sure that money was out in a flexible way to support arts and humanities organizations who, as we know, suffered greatly, being the type of nonprofits that they are in local communities. So thank you for that. And I know I have got 2 libraries in St. Paul that are very excited that serve underrepresented communities and hope that if you're ever out, that you can come visit our libraries. They would be great. And Springboard for the Arts was just such a catalyst. And I know they'll appreciate the grant that they received from the NEA. Because they helped coordinate with nonprofits, the state, and how to make sure that pandemic money went out. I want to just take a second. Mr. Joyce was asking about the work that you do with the Department of Defense and Veterans Affairs. I chair the Defense Subcommittee on Appropriations, and we're going to be reaching out to both of you about maybe some of the work that you've looked at or groups you've been approached to on suicide prevention. We've done a lot with traumatic brain injury and healing and things like that, but also some maybe work we can do together with money, Madam Chair, from the Defense Department. I'm going to make the dollar stretch for everyone. So Chair Lowe and Chair Jackson, can you just kind of give me a snapshot of where you think you're going to have to go with some of the challenges that you're still facing with some of the organizations that you work with as we go through the recovery, as we're dealing with inflation and as we're dealing with, rebuilding institutions, just some of the things that we should be aware of as a committee here to be supportive of the work you're doing in our communities. I'm a former teacher. I'm not going to call on who goes first. You women can decide amongst yourselves. You got the Minnesota nice thing going on. Okay, so Chair Lowe, take it.
Thank you for that wonderful question. And I think that you are absolutely right. We're still trying to identify the needs of our communities, the needs of our humanities institutions, particularly as we start to come out of the pandemic, but we're not yet out of the pandemic. And as we see inflation and costs rising after all that we've been through for the past couple of years. I really want to first, acknowledge our staff who really really got down and got to work and got the CARES and ARP funding out. And we're very cognizant of the needs of institutions. But what we understood and what we have found is that the need is much larger than what we have to be able to support. So we're going to continue to see institutions coming to us with really, really big needs and asks for things that they have to either rebuild, reopen, or reestablish after the pandemic. We're being very clear to work with our Office of General Management, and also in thinking about how do we support BABA, Buy America, Build America, Buy America, and make sure that we can support these projects in the best way possible, but also make sure that we're leveraging our funding in the best way possible to support these projects that are coming forward. I think there's going to be a challenge that we're going to have to be really looking at and paying attention to. And at NEH in particular, our new Office of Data and Evaluation will help us to really assess those challenges and those needs.
Chair Jackson, anything you'd like to add?
Just as Chair Lowe said, to give accolades to the staff at the NEA that did a remarkable job in getting that money out to really deserving and organizations and helped to keep things going. In addition to that, I think one of the challenges is to harvest the lessons of the last few years and resist the urge to just snap back to business as usual. So I think that is one of the challenges, and I really do hope to advance the work of the NEA as a national partner, not only through our grant making, but through our ability to convene, our ability to disseminate information, and be a partner with other national entities and local players in building healthy arts ecosystems.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to try to come in and out for the second panel as I do have a conflict with natural resources. Thank you. I yield back.
Yeah, thank you very much. Representative Simpson, do you have some questions today?
More comments than questions or anything, but I always like this hearing because the endowments are one of my favorite organizations, both of them that do such great work. And, sadly, it's probably under-recognized by the American people and the importance of the work that you do out there. And I've always been one of my advocacies is to make sure that we get grants and so forth out to rural communities because, I've often said, and I don't mean it 100%, but, New York and Los Angeles probably don't need a lot from the arts. They've got arts there and they've got benefactors and everything else, but you get in rural America, and I was surprised to learn that just a minute ago that Maine is the most rural state. I always thought Idaho was one of the most rural states, but we both grow potatoes, so that's okay. But I do want to thank you for the work that you did in making sure that these organizations, these local organizations, could survive during this pandemic, because it was critical to a lot of them. And I'm hopeful that before long we can get back to normal, where we can actually have a hearing in person and talk to you face to face and stuff. And I can't wait till we restart the authors program that the Humanities helps fund in Idaho. And I tell you, they are so well attended and so appreciative by the public as they go around the state and put on these various things. And I've talked with several art museums and local arts council. In fact, I talked with one member of an arts council almost every night. And my wife serves on the Idaho Falls Arts Council, so she gets involved in that. So I've learned a great deal about the importance of the help that you've given these organizations and making sure that they can make it through some very, very difficult times. And I've always found it kind of interesting that we, our committee, even when I was chair, and even before that, we look at the Arts and Humanities Council and we give them the same appropriation. I noticed that you've requested different appropriations this year, one for 200 million and one for 203 million. I don't know what's going on there, but ultimately they will. I suspect that they will be the same in the long run. But how much of the current 167.5 million in this year's budget how much of that goes, what percentage of it goes to local communities and grants to state and local communities in both the arts and humanities?
I can happily answer that. Thank you for that question, Representative Simpson. 40% of the NEH budget goes directly to our state and jurisdictional humanities councils. And, you know, I want to say that they have been great partners. They have been extremely excited about some of the propositions that NEH has for FY23 budget. They are very much looking forward to working with our new Office of Data and Evaluation and our Office of Outreach. And we know that they do amazing work getting our name and our work out into the smaller rural communities. So we're very excited to continue that work.
And I would say similarly, 40% goes to state arts agencies, regional arts organizations for subgranting. And we really appreciate the partnerships that we have with those agencies because they're proximate to the places where the investment should go. So they actually have a level of information and knowledge that is more difficult with further distance. So very grateful for their collaboration in this.
Is the 40% statutory, or is that just what we do?
40% is statutory.
Statutory. So if you got the 200 million or the 203 million that's being requested by the arts, you're looking at probably an increase of, as I calculated, and I was never a math genius, but about 13 million more dollars that would go out to the art or go out to grants and so forth for local communities and stuff.
It would increase the amount to state and jurisdictional humanities councils, yes.
Do you think the 40% level is the right level between the federal government and the state and local communities, or could you increase that percentage that goes out to local agencies?
What we find is that the projects that NEH funds through the funding that does not go to the state and jurisdictional humanities councils go to nationwide projects that then support all populations across all the states. So a lot of our funding for nationwide projects allow individuals in any state to access materials and research freely online, or to develop documentaries that are available to everybody online. So at the moment, we want to ensure that we have enough funding to have those large national projects while still supporting our state and jurisdictional councils.
Same with the arts?
Yes, it's a similar story. It is.
Okay. Well, listen, I appreciate what you do, and I would love to entertain you out in Idaho. I think the last 4 NEA directors have been out to Idaho, and we've had a great time with them out there. And so anytime you can make it, we would love to have you out there and show you around a great state and what they're doing in Idaho and what you're doing in Idaho. So appreciate it. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simpson. Thank you for your, eloquent support for the arts in rural states. I have no idea who rates the states as most rural, and I won't conjecture that that's because of the quality of their potatoes, but we'll just see. I'll find out how that rating system gets done. But we all know Idaho is a very rural state, so we both are thinking the same way about this. So, Representative Lee, do you have questions today?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair Pingree and Ranking Member Joyce. I also want to thank the chairs for being here. It's great to be able to speak to both of you. And I'm proud to represent Las Vegas and Southern Nevada, which is the epicenter of our country's creative and cultural economies, renowned for unforgettable experiences and memories that we provide annually to tens of millions of visitors from around the world. Chair Lowe, I wanted to ask you, acknowledging that much of NEH's funding is delivered not directly to projects, but through humanities councils, such as the Nevada Humanities. And in my state, this council has been incredibly effective in getting the humanities funding exactly where it needs to go. So could you talk about how NEH's support for state humanities councils allows these councils or the federal funding to be leveraged several times over at a local level, serving as seed money that enables these councils to be able to use that to raise additional funds to advance programming and projects beyond those funded directly by NEH?
Sure, thank you so much for that question. Our funding that goes to state and jurisdictional humanities councils allows the councils to do a number of things. One is to provide their own programming, which they use our funding to do public speaker events, to do major events in certain locations, libraries, museums. But the second thing that the funding allows each council to do is to provide then re-granting funds to organizations, usually small, local, rural organizations. And these funds can do one of two things. They can provide planning grants that allow these organizations to really develop some programs and to develop even fundraising ideas and avenues to build these programs up. The second thing that it does, it allows programs to then start small and provide these programs, and to then bring in outside funders who see the impact of these programs within the state and within the communities, and then bring in additional funding to support and or even sometimes endow some of the programs that move forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been the beneficiary of many of those programs and being able to enjoy them in our community. So appreciate that. Chair Jackson, you went from my state is not alone in facing a mental health crisis, especially as a result of this pandemic. And a recent survey released last month found that close to 6 out of 10 Americans have experienced concerns either about their own mental health or that of families and friends. And this is up 9% since the spring of 2020. You have said that you're especially excited about the growing body of work that the NEA is doing in advancing the intersection of arts and health. And I wanted to ask you if you could please speak to how you believe the NEA is positioned to improve Americans' mental health in particular, especially through the intersection with the arts.
Thank you for that question, Representatively. There are several things that are happening at the NEA that I think are relevant to your interest. One, of course, is Creative Forces, which was discussed a bit earlier. Another is the Sound Health Network, which is a collaboration of the NEA, the University of California, San Francisco, the National Institute of Health, the Kennedy Center, and Renee Fleming. And it's a network that is it's a national resource center that helps with connecting research, public awareness, and actual services on music, health, and wellness. This month, they're actually having a gathering of neuroscientists, music therapists, musicians, and health professionals to examine evidence about music and mental health. So that's an example of, I think, powerful players coming together to develop a national resource and hopefully create some other ways of thinking about how to address mental health issues and how to frame them in ways that we can actually make a difference. That's one of the things that I find most powerful about the arts is the ability to reframe issues and think of different ways of arriving at solutions. And health is a really important area where that's possible.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. I couldn't agree more. I think this is an exciting body of research and looking forward to that. And with that, I'll yield back. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Capter, do you have questions today?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I wanted to welcome Chair Lowe and Dr. Jackson. Thank you so very much. Also begin with a deep thanks for sending such talented people out to our region to have a discussion about how to better relate across Northern Ohio from Cleveland to Toledo to your instrumentalities. We can keep doing better at that in our region. My first question, and I have a couple, relates to Chair Lowe on the potential to do more to collect the stories of Americans who trace their heritage to Eastern and Central Europe. I'm wondering, especially given the war in Ukraine and the focus of our country and the world on that, how your agency might use funding from the budget request to help support the archival collection of stories, documents, and other materials from America's cultural diasporas who have come from that part of the world to our country most of the countries of the former Soviet Union. For example, I accidentally discovered a Slovak museum, Czech museum in Iowa, a Lithuanian museum in Chicago, a Ukrainian museum in Cleveland, and a Polish Piast museum in Hamtramck, Michigan. And as I sort of dug into it, I found out that our Library of Congress, our major humanities organizations don't really relate to them in any kind of coherent manner. And so my first question is, what might we do better in terms of administering a collaborative humanities research and maybe set of exchanges between American scholars who are knowledgeable of these collections, and even extending to some of the scholars that might, that may exist in that part of the world, and how we might shape an initiative like that. And then Dr. Jackson, I wanted to ask a question about marketing of the arts. Between Cleveland and Toledo, we probably have 10,000 artists. They're phenomenal. But their ability to market, I think artists are left-brain people and marketers are right-brain people. And I think we have a little trouble getting the arts elevated. And I'm wondering any kind of direction you might be able to give to local arts communities on how to do a better job of marketing and also protecting their trademark or their patents. I don't like the idea that regions like mine may be left behind to the larger, wealthier metropolitan areas. And a related concern is for the 40% of your funding distributed to state arts agencies and regional arts organizations, how consciously do we direct the states to make sure and be equitable in the way that those dollars are distributed, so that all communities have the opportunity to participate and to be respected. I have one museum, the African American community in Toledo, wants to do some work for a set of collections there, where we were a major jazz center and so forth. And boy, it's been so hard to get the state of Ohio to do anything. So I just, those are my questions, and I'll listen for any insights. And again, thank you for coming out to our region and introducing yourselves.
Thank you much, Representative Capter. And, I want to start with saying that myself and the staff at NEH our hearts and our minds are with the people of Ukraine and with everything that has been going on. There are a number of ways that NEH can support the preservation of oral history and the culture of Eastern Europe. We can do that through our Division of Preservation and Access programs, through grants that institutions like you named could come in and apply for. We can do it through the state and jurisdictional humanities councils who may want to do the same thing, particularly with immigrants who are coming into their communities. We can provide grants to help do oral history projects. We can also do interagency agreements that allow us to really specify and look at a particular project and work with other agencies to make sure that we can move that forward. So there are a number of instances of things that we can do. The last thing we can do, which is a little bit more quick than our regular grant programs, is we have chairs grants. And chairs grants at the moment can be initiated to really address the issues of Eastern European individuals, particularly those coming into the United States and trying to capture their stories and experiences.
Have you ever worked with the Library of Congress on the Veterans History Collection there that relates to World War II, the World War II Veterans History Collection, and trying to connect why America fought that war, why so many Americans gave their lives? Are you aware of any effort through the humanities?
We have done many projects with the Library of Congress. I would have to connect with the staff to find out specifically on that, and we'll get back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Jackson?
Just to comment on your question about distribution of resources of the 40%. Thank you for that question, Representative Capter. We work closely with the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies, and that's the professional organization that supports the 56 state and jurisdictional agencies in our country. And they have a strong research office which together with ours tracks the NEA grant making through state and regional partnerships. Mapping that data helps us better understand distributions and disparities. So very aware of your concern and eager to continue using that tool to help us understand how to make sure that we're working in an equitable fashion. But I'm very grateful for the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies and the capacity to be able to do that. On your question related to artists and marketing, yeah, I think it's important to look to the local and regional entities that exist as artist support systems in some ways, connections to small business associations, to other resources that one may not think of as exclusively for artists could be beneficial. Certainly artists have particular needs as it relates to programming and to the marketing of their contributions. I think in many areas there are intermediary organizations that could be strengthened to help artists do the kind of business development, whether they're working in the nonprofit realm or meandering between nonprofit and for-profit. The ability to have resources to help them construct their careers is really important.
Yes, doctors, thank you for your, on that marketing issue, if you could send me examples around the country of where some place is doing it well.
I'd be happy to get back to you. Yes,
Okay.
but happy to get back to you with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair Capter. And at this point, I think we will thank our panel. We've had time for one round of questions, and we certainly appreciate that. And just before I end the panel, I want to ask unanimous consent from the members present at the hearing today to enter into the hearing record testimony from AFL-CIO Department of Professional Employees. This testimony highlights the importance of funding for the endowments, the economic benefits that funding provides, and the importance of promoting diversity in these industries. Hearing no objection, the document will be entered into the record. So I want to thank both witnesses for appearing before us today. We appreciate your testimony, your answers to our questions, and just thank you very much for the work you're doing. And we're going to continue to look forward to working with you as a committee as we go through our budget process. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Chairwoman Pingree?
Yes.
Can I just make a quick statement?
Of course you can. Absolutely.
While it's this panel. To Chairwoman Lowe, Jim Leach, who used to be the chairman of the Humanities years ago, served in Congress with us. When he started, he went out on a project on trying to ensure civility in this country. If there is ever a time when that initiative needs to be restarted or needs to be worked on, I would encourage you to do it now, because it's now more necessary than ever before.
Thank you, Representative Simpson. I agree. And I think that this is very much a priority for the agency and for myself as we move forward.
Thank you.
Very good point to make at this moment in time. So thank you for that. And with that, we will allow our panel to depart and get back to their busy days, and look forward to hearing from our second panel, who I'm assuming are with us.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful morning.
So I would like to welcome our second panel, Secretary Lonnie G. Bunch III, the 14th Secretary of the Smithsonian Institution, and Kaiwen Feldman, the Director of the National Gallery of Art, who are joining us to discuss their FY 2023 budget requests and their collaborative projects. I want to note that this is Secretary Bunch's first time testifying before the committee, so I'm eager for the opportunity to learn more about your vision for the institution. In 2021, the Smithsonian celebrated a milestone, its 175th anniversary. We hope today's hearing will provide an opportunity for you to discuss how you imagine the treasures, research, data, and scholarship of the Smithsonian will be used to achieve your mission, the increase in diffusion of knowledge in the next 175 years. The 2023 budget request is $1.175 billion, an increase of $112 million over the FY 2022 enacted level. We look forward to discussing how this requested increase will support the Smithsonian's digital transformation, educational goals, robust research programs, and make essential investments in both the facilities and the workforce. The FY 2023 National Gallery of Art budget request is $209 million, an increase of $28.7 million over the FY 2022 enacted level. The FY 2023 budget request represents an exciting time of change for the National Gallery as it moves forward with both renovations to the main gallery buildings, as well as the construction of the Pod 6 joint storage facility in cooperation with the Smithsonian. Furthermore, the gallery's budget includes strategic investments in additional staff to support its work to advance racial equity from the artists whose work is being displayed to the gallery's staff and audience. According to the gallery's budget request, in FY 2019, over 7 million people benefited from the gallery's online presence, and over 33 million people utilized free educational resources from the gallery. In addition to the broad engagement these statistics show, the gallery makes hundreds of art loans available across the country to benefit Americans beyond those that can make the trip to visit the gallery in person. I look forward to hearing more about your efforts to expand this engagement and work towards your other priorities, Director Feldman. Secretary Bunch and Director Feldman, I appreciate the work that you and the employees of the Smithsonian and National Gallery do to advance the civic, educational, scientific, and artistic life of this nation. I look forward to your testimony this afternoon and to hearing more about your plans for your organizations and through the next fiscal year. I'd like to yield to our ranking member, Mr. Joyce, for his opening remarks.
Thank you again for yielding, Madam Chair, and welcome, Secretary Bunch and Director Feldman. We appreciate you joining us this morning to discuss the budget priorities for the Smithsonian Institution and National Gallery Art for the fiscal year 2023. I think it's fair to say that you have the most interesting jobs in Washington. You are entrusted with challenging responsibility of operating and managing two of our nation's most revered and visited institutions. Each year, millions of visitors, both in person and online, access your treasured collections. Through your exhibitions and outreach programs, you have inspired children and scholars across the globe to discover new knowledge, experience art, and explore the world around them. Today, I look forward to understanding how the FY 23 budget supports your agency's priorities for the coming year and reasonably builds upon the investments Congress provided in FY 22 and ensures that your facilities are properly maintained to reduce risks to your collection, visitors, and employees. In particular, I'd like to discuss progress on development of your shared offsite storage facility, as well as the multi-year renovation of the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum. Over the coming months, I look forward to working with you and my subcommittee colleagues to provide the Smithsonian and National Gallery with the necessary resources to ensure that both of your invaluable collections are protected and maintained for future generations. I look forward to our discussion. Thank you, Chair Pingree. I yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joyce. Now I would like to yield to Secretary Bunch and then Director Feldman for their opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Pingree and Ranking Member Joyce and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today about the Smithsonian's FY 2023 budget request. I realize it's a sizable request, but to accomplish what you've asked of us requires a robust budget, especially as we recover from the fiscal challenges of the pandemic. With 2 new museums on the horizon, big renovation plans, existing maintenance requirements, and the need to expand our reach, relevance, and impact, it's critical we can count on the full support of Congress. My priorities for the Smithsonian are based on my conviction that our shared future as a nation depends more than ever on our ability to work together, and that the Smithsonian can play an important role in giving people the tools to confront our greatest challenges. As such, our strategic focus priorities can be viewed through the lens of the impact they will have on our shared future. We clearly want to ensure every home and every classroom can have access to the Smithsonian's digital content. We want to work together to build a more nimble, more effective Smithsonian. We want to be a trusted source that explores and grapples with what it means to be an American. And we want to harness Smithsonian expertise to elevate science in the global discourse. And finally, we want to build and enrich a national culture of learning by engaging with educational systems nationwide. We have several institution-wide initiatives that touch on these priorities. Most of those were sped up as a result of the pandemic. To outline just a few, one exploring the American experience will form local partnerships to promote discussion and dialogue with underreached rural audiences. And another already underway is increasing the use of audience-driven data to inform our decisions makings. And to be a nimbler Smithsonian, we are developing the policies and toolkits necessary to implement flexible work practices. Our newest museums, the National Museum of the American Latino and the Smithsonian American Women's History Museum, present an opportunity to put all these into practice. They can model what a modern museum should be: truly digital, impressively nimble, with rich educational platforms that spur conversations and improve communities. These museums, though, are a lifetime shared commitment between Congress and the Smithsonian, increasing our need for collection space, maintenance, and staffing in perpetuity. I'm confident that your full support will allow them to be the exemplars for decades to come. We must also face the condition of our existing buildings and collection storage spaces when planning. Deferred maintenance is concerning since it threatens our collections. Our most important facilities management issues are controlling environmental conditions and preventing water from broaching some of our buildings. Your ongoing support will help us strategically apply our maintenance funds and capital projects towards aging infrastructure. With nearly one half of our current backlog in the Air and Space Museum and in the Smithsonian Castle, our planned revitalizations will address the most pressing concerns. And given the extra space necessitated by the new museums and by the Hirshhorn and American Histories revitalization projects, the expansion of both Suitland and Dulles sites are vital. One near-term capital project is the new Museum Support Center Pod 6 that will be a shared storage space for us and the National Gallery of Art. The President's FY 2023 budget addresses some of these challenges, and your support and guidance gives me confidence in our future success. Recently, the National Science Foundation announced the creation of an image of a supermassive black hole in the center of the Milky Way. The Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory played a key role in that image, an example of the cutting-edge collaborative work that we do at the Smithsonian. Whether it is giving students and teachers tools to understand history, whether it's bringing people together to discuss issues that affect their communities, or peering across the stars for a clearer look at our galaxy, our work benefits everyone. With your help, we'll be able to continue to increase and diffuse knowledge for another 175 years. Thank you for holding this hearing, for your ongoing support, and for your commitment to working with us for a better shared future. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Feldman.
Chair Pingree, Ranking Member Joyce, members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. It's my great pleasure to talk to you about the National Gallery of Art and our fiscal year 2023 federal budget request. I'd also like to thank you for your support of our fiscal year 2022 budget that provided the necessary funds to keep the National Gallery operational during this challenging time. Like the nation we serve, the National Gallery has endured 2 tumultuous years marked by a global pandemic. We became adept at pivoting to keep the museum available for our visitors, and despite closings and reopenings, our 2021 calendar year attendance was 1.7 million, which is the second largest attendance for an art museum in the United States and the 5th largest globally. I'm delighted to share some of the ways we have innovated during this time to return to and expand on our regular operations. And through robust engagement across our digital channels, we increased digital attendance by over 50%. Our website and social media platforms featured 360-degree virtual tours, a new storytelling blog, a podcast that brought musicians together with works of art, and a fresh approach to video on YouTube. And online, we reimagined our popular educational lesson plans to serve teachers working with remote classrooms. These educator resources reached nearly 1 million individuals in fiscal year 2020, which is a 200% increase. On site in April, we opened Afro-Atlantic Histories, which takes an in-depth look at the historical experiences and cultural formations of Black and African people through the eyes of artists since the 17th century. I've been moved by several of our long-serving staff who have mentioned how wonderful it is to see their own story on our walls for the first time. I hope you all have an opportunity to see this important presentation before it closes on July 17th. We have 7 additional exhibitions opening, including American Silence, the photographs of Robert Adams, featuring works that show us the wonder of the American West, which I know is a subject that this subcommittee knows very well. Later in 2022, we'll offer a wide range of presentations, including works by Whistler, Sargent, and Carpaccio, and the exhibitions The Double, Identity and Difference in Art since 1900, and Called to Create, Black Artists of the American South. The National Gallery has a long history of loaning works of art to American museums to share the nation's fine arts collection with as many Americans as possible. In 2021, the gallery loaned 285 artworks to 88 museums in cities across the United States. With immense gratitude to you, our public partners in Congress and the administration, we made significant progress on the master facilities plan, and the East Building atrium skylight has been replaced, and the iconic building will reopen on June 30th. We can literally and metaphorically see daylight again. Visitors will now enter through a more accessible main entrance, find a separate elevator lobby within the newly refurbished auditorium, and access to additional restrooms. We are also advancing our partnership with the Smithsonian for the shared art storage facility, as Secretary Bunch mentioned, known as Pod 6. This project is our highest priority in the fiscal year 2023 request. We will no longer rely on third-party provider for inadequate off-site art storage, and it will allow us to have capacity for collections growth for the foreseeable future, while also permitting galleries currently used for art storage to be reopened to the public. Our fiscal year 2023 budget request for renovation also includes funds to continue to address much needed and overdue stone repair work and to finish portions of the West Building roof. And we have much more to do. We have mapped out a strategic plan for the next 18 months that will strengthen our mission, expanding the understanding of our audiences and our ability to reach them. Your commitment confirms our role as a truly national gallery. We welcome you, your constituents, and our audiences from around the world to explore our galleries, collections, and programs, which connect us all to triumphs of creativity and our shared humanity. Thank you for your ongoing support of the National Gallery of Art and for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for your testimony before us, but also for the work that you are doing and the amazing work you've done during the pandemic and all the challenges that has brought to us. I'm going to go right to Ranking Member Joyce for the first question.
You're very kind, Madam Chair, as always. Thank you very much. And again, thank you both for being here today. Director Feldman, last year, the National Gallery lent over 280 artworks to 88 museums in cities across the country, including Cleveland's Museum of Art. I think this is a wonderful partnership that allows Americans across the country to see some of the gallery's collection and original works without necessarily having to travel to Washington, D.C. Can you discuss the importance of this loan program and the National Gallery's plans to work with additional museums this year?
Thank you very much, Ranking Member Joyce. I'm very proud of our policy on loans. Here at the National Gallery, we start with the answer yes when we get a loan request. And it's only after doing our research about the facilities and other issues about whether or not a work of art might already be committed that we might decline. So we're very generous about it. The number that you mentioned of 285 works is about 60% of what we normally lend. So that really represents the fact that so many museums were closed during COVID. So we do everything in our power to get those works out. I'm also proud that we partner, of course, with museums with our exhibition program. And over the last 5 years, we have loaned 66 or sent exhibitions that we've organized to 66 different museums. So that's another way where we actually are able to partner and get those works out around the country.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Secretary Bunch, you noted in your testimony that as the Smithsonian begins developing the 2 new museums, the institution must also factor in the condition of existing buildings when planning. And given the request includes another $23 million to continue renovations at the National Air and Space Museum that began in 2018, can you provide a status update on those renovations? And can you walk us through some of the costs and schedule impacts that you've experienced?
Thank you very much for the question. The National Air and Space Museum renovation is on track, but as you know, it went over budget for a variety of reasons. The most important reason was that as we began to actually take the cladding off the building, there was much more damage than we ever thought. And that led to us basically having to spend much more money on steel and the likes. Also, I think what was important is that we've all been affected by the supply chain. And that in essence, we had trouble getting materials, and that allowed us to go over budget. But because of your support last year, we were able to sort of take about $53 million of that override. And that's why the other $23 million will allow us to finish the work on the Air and Space Museum so that we can open again to the public in the fall.
Well, thank you. And I applaud the 2 of you working together. And Director Feldman, your 23 request includes $27 million for the gallery share of the construction and project management costs for Pod 6, the new shared art storage facility at the Smithsonian Support Center. Can you provide us with an update on Pod 6 status and explain how the shared storage center will help the gallery save on storage costs in the long run? And could you discuss what has been driving these increases?
Yeah, so we are really excited to be partnering with our colleagues at the Smithsonian. This is the first time we've done a major construction project together, and we feel it's much more efficient and effective to work together. And we are just about finished with the design portion of Pod 6, and we hope to contract by the end of the fiscal year or by the end of the calendar year, I believe, and actually occupy the building in 2025. So we're moving forward. And the cost increases came from a couple of different factors. One was our original projections were based before the building was fully designed. So as we had more information, we learned more about the actual costs. Our percentage of the shared facility actually increased. We originally planned to have 33% of the building for storage. And because of the design dictated a certain level of split. So we now will have 42% of the building. And so that increases the gallery costs, but reduces on the Smithsonian side. And then the final area of cost increase that both the Smithsonian and the National Gallery experienced is because of the increased cost of materials with the global, after the global pandemic. So.
Secretary Bunch, you have anything to add?
I'm just telling you, I'm just so excited about this because this is really an example of how, as we work together, we save costs and we handle one of the major problems we both face, which is storage. And I think the fact that we were able to sort of adapt the building to make sure it worked both for the National Gallery and for the Smithsonian, while that led for some increased costs, what it really meant is we now have a model going forward of how we can work together. And this really has a major impact for the Smithsonian. It really allows us to sort of move materials from some of the areas where we're most concerned, like the Garber facility, so that therefore we can actually make sure that some of the collections most at risk are taken care of. And it just reminds us that we really have to make sure that we continue to work and point towards how we preserve our collections in the future.
I applaud your efforts, and it's a high watermark on how government should be operating together and efficiently. Thank you for your time, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you for those really excellent questions. Chair McCollum, do you have questions today? You might still be muted.
Pretty much sitting in this room by myself, but I'm trying to make sure I don't contribute to background noise. It's great to see you both. Minnesota misses you both and in very different ways, but we are excited to be here today. And once again, Chair Pingree, you've done a great job working with Ranking Member Joyce and making sure that we protect these iconic institutions here in Washington, D.C., which our constituents come to see. You both are at transformational points in how we're reaching audiences, and you're both reaching a high water of cooperation. And I know that you also cooperate working with the Library of Congress. So I couldn't be more proud of the team spirit here and making sure that our collections are shared by all and accessible to everyone. So there are a lot of challenges museums and our collections are facing right now with reparation. And Chair Bunch, I know you're dealing with one right now with the Benin Kingdom court style pieces, returning things to Nigeria. Could you talk about how this is fitting into the Smithsonian's role in the future? I'm right now going to be going into a hearing in the Natural Resources Committee, which we're working on repatriation for Native American treasures and trying to protect Native American culture, which has been sold off and abused. Could you maybe tell us a little bit what's going on, Mr. Bunch, maybe first about what's going on with Nigeria, and then anything you'd like to share. I almost used your first name, Chair Feldman.
Well, thank you so much. It's always good to see you. It's really important for the Smithsonian to provide global leadership in the cultural community. And one of the most important issues is this question of how do we make sure that the materials we have in our collection are really taken care of, but also are effectively owned by the institution. And I created a kind of group to look at this whole notion of repatriation, to basically say, how do we make sure we have the highest standards? And one of the things we've done is we've built on the history of repatriating Native American materials through NAGPRA. But what I wanted to do is have a system that would allow us, rather than to work ad hoc, but to think strategically about how we return and how we work and how we share our collections. And the best example is the one you mentioned, which is the bronzes from Benin. These were bronzes that were stolen by the British with a raid in 1897, and they were then sent around the world. And the Smithsonian has 30 some of these bronzes. And that what we did is I decided to look at this, as we heard from the country of Nigeria about, are these the bronzes from the raid? So we did the research, and it turned out that 29 of the bronzes are from the raid. And so what we are doing is moving towards returning those bronzes in a way that satisfies the country of Nigeria, but allows the US to still have access to it. So for example, what we're doing is we're going to return if the Board of Regents approves at their next meeting, we're going to return permanent ownership to the country of Nigeria, and we will return a number of them, but others will stay on a permanent loan so that we can continue to sort of tell the story about these bronzes. So I think that's a really good solution. And the response in the museum community around the world has been very, very positive. The notion that we found a way to do something ethical, but also to make sure that the material is still accessible to wide audiences. And I think this is something that we will continue to look at as we move forward in working with other nations and other cultures.
And I can actually add in there too that I was surprised my first month at the gallery to learn that we also have a Benin bronze in our collection. It's the only work of historic African art that we have. And so about 2.5 years ago, we reached out to Nigeria to start the process of repatriation. And we're hoping that this summer we will actually return the Benin bronze in our collection back to Nigeria, because as Secretary Bunch said, we have confirmed that it was part of that 1897 looting. So we're also participating.
Well, it's wonderful that you're doing the right thing, the ethical thing, but it's also great to see the United States take leadership on this. And thank you, Chair Pingree, for. I'm going to get back in and into natural resources and talk about boarding schools and what we need to do to get the history right on that. And I know the arts and the Smithsonian Institution will have something to say about that as we go through our healing process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair McCollum. That's a really important topic, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Chair Capter, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask today?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your leadership and that of my Ohio colleague, David Joyce. Both of you represent magnificent institutions yourselves. I have two questions. The first one to Director Bunch. Would the Smithsonian be willing to explore a partnership with the National Park Service to enhance historical interpretation and commemorative activities at the National World War II Memorial? And let me explain. With Russia's invasion of Ukraine, I do believe that we have a teachable moment, unlike any other that I've seen in modern history, for our own people about the unvarnished face of tyranny and why liberty matters. I'm amazed at the younger people of this country as that horrible war proceeds, that they haven't seen this before. I'm the author of the bill that created the World War II Memorial. We started in 1987. Over 85 million people have now come to that memorial. I think it's at a place, especially at this moment, which we have to think hard about helping to inform the American people themselves. It's only 1% of our people participate in the military now with a enlistment system as opposed to a conscripted system. And I have just been astounded actually at some of the younger people of our country and what they don't know even about our own history. The National Park Service, when we first built the memorial, I was very reluctant to agree to turn it over to the Park Service because I said they're not experts at history on the why of America fought. And that need still exists. So I just wanted to check mark that particular issue. I will do a follow-up letter to you, but I think you have the ability to add depth to what occurs with the multiple ceremonies across that memorial during the year. 2024 will be the 20th anniversary of the actual opening of the memorial. I mean, millions upon millions of people have gone there. It's something to think about. And then secondly, I wanted to say to Director Feldman, across our country, we have Ukrainian museums and archives, such as in Cleveland, Ohio, which is better than Harvard University. And with this war going on, I think there might be an opportunity to bring collections that exist, that there could be an exhibition at the Smithsonian. I don't know if you're allowed to do fundraisers, but keep that in the back of your mind. We can probably get not-for-profit groups to help. But some of the artwork, some of the political posters dating back to the Soviet period, the artistry of the Ukrainian Americans themselves, and to supportive nations like Poland and Lithuania and Estonia, which is astounding, what Finland has just done in this last couple of days. I think there's something there. And I think we need to think about it because the Slavic peoples, of which I am one, we have no museum in Washington. Nobody even sees us. My constituents don't know that the word Slav comes from slaves. We were white slaves. And so there's this big gap. And because the Soviet Union was our ally, in quotes, during World War II, and American soldiers never got east of Berlin, there's this huge gap. And I'm discovering places. I was in Iowa. I saw the Slovak Museum there, the Czech Museum, the Lithuanian Museum in Chicago, the Piast Institute in Hamtramck, Michigan, of all places. And I'm seeing these things and I'm saying, there's some lack of connectivity to Washington here and our national understanding of why these people are here and that they survived to live out their lives here. So I just wanted to put that set of issues on the table for you. We will follow up with a letter, but I think we could do better. The artworks, oh my goodness, some of what exists needs to be seen, and we need to elevate this, especially now. So thank you for listening. And if you have any response, that's fine. But hopefully you'll be open to exploring these pathways forward.
Well, I think you've raised such an important set of issues. We feel very strongly that part of our job at the Smithsonian is to make sure America understands its history, its full history, its complicated history, its interesting history. And so part of that is the collaborations we already do. We have hundreds of affiliate museums that we help tell the stories they want. And some of those are museums that deal with Lithuanian culture, Ukrainian culture. So I think we'd be very interested in working with you to think about how do we sort of tell these stories? How do we make sure that the struggle and the achievement of our military experience through World War II is never forgotten and is celebrated both as something to look back to, but as something to build on. And I think that's something that Smithsonian really wants to do. And tied to this is I've made a major commitment by creating a kind of Smithsonian cultural rescue initiative. And we have spent time around the world helping nations that have either suffered catastrophes like an earthquake in Haiti or the destruction in Mosul. And we are now working looking at Ukraine. We're working with our partners, and we've created a satellite opportunity to review damage on historic sites so that when the war is over, we'll know where to go, how to help. We're also providing training for Ukrainian experts to basically be able to conserve the materials when the war is over. But what we're also doing is we're working with partners now to actually provide fellowships for Ukrainian scholars and museum professionals to come to Washington so that as they're displaced, they have a chance to do their scholarship and engage with other colleagues. So this is really important for us. And it's part of my commitment of saying that the Smithsonian has been given so much, and now it's make sure we give back.
Thank you for that response. Just so you know, there's a Ukrainian caucus in the House. We founded it back in the 90s. And we have 90 members. So there's a Polish caucus, there's a Hungarian caucus there, but these are largely ignored cultural groupings in our country. And frankly, many of their collections are deteriorating. They're viewed as unimportant. And I just wanted to sensitize you to that, and I appreciate your openness. Ms. Feldman, did you want to say something? I saw you.
I just wanted to also add my gratitude for bringing the topic up. It's something that we feel is very important. And like Secretary Bunch, my colleagues and I are on part of many different conversations and calls with global arts leaders about what we might be able to do, and particularly think about artistic diplomacy and cultural diplomacy. Our conservation team is also has done a lot of work and research that we want to share with our colleagues. So we're ready to help, and also look forward to exploring the idea of doing some kind of a loan partnership so that we can raise awareness.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just will say one insight I've had, because American soldiers never made it east of Berlin during World War II, and unfortunately we were allied with Stalin, there's this great gap. And what shocked me with this war in Ukraine is to look at these young people as I go out to the schools. They don't even know there was a 20th century, right? So they have no context in which to understand what's happening. And they're just they're awestruck. They were stuck to the TV and to their devices and everything. I thought, oh my goodness, they don't even know how many Americans lie in graves across Europe. And so there's a huge gap here. And it's a generational gap. So I appreciate you listening, and I thank the chair and the ranking member. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your questions and to both of you for your answers to that such important topics. Well, we've brought up a lot of important issues, and I'm just going to finish the questioning with going back to some of the more pedestrian parts of what you do. But could you both talk a little bit about the work you've been doing and what you're working on in the future on the whole digitizing of your collections, making it more available to the public? I know you've made great leaps, as both of you mentioned, during the pandemic to make things more accessible digitally, and also have big goals. I know with the Smithsonian to have everything digitized, but tell us a little bit more about the educational opportunities there, just how that's going, how the funding is being used. And if you both could just respond a little bit about that. I know you have plenty to say about what your work is.
Kaiwen, I'll let you go first.
Thank you, Secretary Wunsch. Yes, like everybody else, with the pandemic, we launched into digital in a much more substantial way than we had done before. And as I mentioned, saw our subscribers and views increase substantially. And that has also led us to realize that we need to redesign our website, because our website was really designed 20 years ago for a different type of digital use. And so we are in the process of starting the redesign, focus much more on how people use websites today. And that means, better and shorter videos. The views of hour-long lectures are decreasing, breaks my heart, but decreasing today. So we're looking at quicker videos, as well as some of the hour-long, doing blogs and podcasts, just sort of different ways to engage people. We know that the work that we do here is profoundly interesting. And every day I hear of some new research tidbit that is exciting. And so what we're trying to do is get better at actually telling our story. So lots of initiatives there. We recently launched something we're calling Artle, which is modeled on Wordle. And people can go on our website every day, and they get 4 attempts at identifying an artist, and that has been wildly successful and has increased participation on the website. And then I'll just finish by saying that, of course, we're also thinking about how we work with teachers and students. And we saw such an increase in the needs for our programs during the pandemic. I learned just yesterday, as I was leaving the building, from one of our educators that we're still seeing a huge demand for digital learning with schools and classrooms, even though we've returned to in-person school tours. And so now we're doing both in-person and doing a better job even of reaching the rest of the country now as we return to more in-person work. So I'm really excited about those educational initiatives too.
And we learned during the pandemic that though I closed the buildings, we made sure the Smithsonian wasn't closed by pivoting digitally. And that in essence, what we've learned, much like Kaiwen has learned, is that basically this is now the new normal, that there are great opportunities to watch teachers utilize both in-person and digital as part of their training and part of their teaching. And I'm really pleased. I think that we've reached over 10 million more people through our educational programs in 2021. And so that's really been very exciting, because what has happened is that teachers have reached out to us from the very beginning of the pandemic to say, help us educate, help parents who became teachers. How did they educate? So we did several things. We actually worked with teachers around the country and curated a series of long distance learning modules that worked for teachers, that really gave them the information they wanted, and that allowed us to make sure that it wasn't something we created and we hoped they used it. It was something that was really directly shaped by the teachers. And one of the things that has really moved me has been our learning lab. And what we've done is we have taken tens of thousands of our artifacts and made them available to teachers. But what happens is the teachers go into the learning lab and they may type in Abraham Lincoln and find everything we have on Lincoln. But also as they use those, whether it's for lesson plans or teacher activities, they then share that back to the Smithsonian so thousands of other teachers benefit from their work. So in essence, our learning lab is kind of like a rock in a stream, that it's a ripple effect that other people are amplifying. And so it allows us to recognize that our greatest strength is also figuring out how we are an effective collaborator. And so in a way, our educational programs, our use of social media has really allowed us to learn more about what the audiences need, shape our programs to do that. It's allowed us to recognize that I believe strongly that we have to be in every classroom. And so we're really thinking, what are the ways we do that? And also, quite candidly, we're also thinking about how do we make sure we have low technology or no technology opportunities, because there are people, as you know, that the digital divide is tough and not everybody learns the same way. So we've created collaborations with things like the USA Today to actually get out tens of thousands of study guides and learning activities that go to schools. So we're really committed to saying that education is at the heart of what the Smithsonian is. And as a result of that, I actually committed for the first time, created an Undersecretary for Education that the Smithsonian's really never had at that level. And so this is really part of our commitment to think, how do we recognize that the wonders of the Smithsonian are too important just to be in Washington, and that the wonders of the Smithsonian are part of the way people now learn. You know, I was trained, you learn, it's history, it's art, it's math, but now today it's all integrated. We're better than the Smithsonian to bring our science, our history, our culture together. So in some ways, I want to make sure that the Smithsonian is really at the leading edge of how we help what has been the biggest challenges countries face, how we make sure we provide equal educational opportunities for all of our students.
Great. Well, thank you so much, really, both of you. I can tell are moving, by leaps and bounds here, and it's just so critically important. We never really can address anything as a silver lining of the pandemic, but I think the way our institutions have reacted to the pandemic, and you two are both great examples of understanding, something we should have been doing for a long time, and that's make these resources available to everybody and, integrate the ability for educators to do that. So that's just wonderful. We greatly appreciate that. I think we've completed our questions for the day, and we thank you so much for the work you're doing, for taking time out of your busy days to be with our committee. We look forward to continuing to work with you as the budget process moves forward. And just thank you again. So with that, I will consider this hearing adjourned. Thank you very much.